have a toolbox ready of stories that you brought value to the business in your previous work. And that value can be tangible in numbers, it can be also tangible in value from processes. At the end of the day, what they really want to know is what can you bring to their business? And this is the skill. Those SMART goals, tangible goals, and everything, the toolkit and everything that I mentioned in the past, they're all very valuable. But my unique experience is to add the story element into it. Because once you add the story element into it, it becomes about you. Good Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Weekly Bustle with Ahad. Today is one of those solo podcasts again, where I want to talk about something different this time. Actually, I've been talking a lot about ideas and theory and a lot of stuff in the air, which is not really practical sometimes, and also not really like a good how-to. So I got a lot of feedback and a lot of engagement about let's talk about something more tangible. And in my social circle of friends, everyone knows me as a contractor, as a freelancer. So they keep asking me, how do I manage the grind of a freelancer? Because there are certain things a freelancer has to do again and again that something a full-time employee doesn't really need to do, right? The fact that you have to always keep your resume updated, you have to keep doing projects on the side to have a portfolio, the fact that you have to go to interviews every single time, again and again after a few months. So you need to be sharp, you need to be able to sell yourself. And those are skills that they said are quite interesting, that they want to know more about. So I thought maybe why not make a video out of it, just to give an idea of what skills I employ using in my interviews, in my whole search for a new project, and maybe something out of it you would also like and find it actionable enough that it could help you land something of yours down the road. So I would like to break it down into three things. Number one is resume building, number two is interviews, and number three is projects. But I do want to stress that I'm not an expert in these three things. If I would consider myself an expert or experienced, it would be only in the interview stage, because I have given so much interviews that it's like a playbook now that I have felt I have got a lot of experience to show for. So to begin, I would first like to tell you that pedigree of experience. This year, 2024, I actually recorded my interviews and the amount of job applications I did and how many I was offered. And what I saw was that the amount I applied to is a huge number that I didn't even record. I think it was upwards of 100 plus within a span of 2 months, because you apply everywhere. So I don't really count that reply rate that high, because you're applying to places sometimes you don't even feel qualified for. But I got like 16 replies. And this is where I really consider my specialty. That those 16 calls that I got, that first interview, the getting to know each other feel, understanding if it's a match. Out of those 16, I think 15 called me back for a second interview, which was more of a technical interview. So that's a hit rate of more than 90%. And that is really my specialty, to get your first foot in the door. Because once you do that, then it's up to your actual experience, because after that is usually the technical interview and then the culture fit. So then you need to really know your stuff. But the first part is not really about that. The first part is more about, okay, how do you present yourself? Are you a likable personality? And of course, do you have some experience that you can vouch for, either through your resume, through your projects, or just through the way you talk? And that is really a small niche that I really feel like I'm an expert in. So to finish up that story, out of those 16 calls that I got, 15 called me back. And I think I got a job offer at the end of 6. This includes different other types of projects as well, like teaching and coaching. So 6 were the job opportunities I got, and the full-time roles that I got were, I think, 3, and out of which I had to pick one. So those are good numbers, especially because when I started back in 2017, I only used to always get one job offer at the end of the day. And that would also be just one lucky thing that I kept advancing in. So now it's become more easier to have a choice. And that doesn't just boil down to me being good at interviews. It also boils down to my experience. I work in a very niche field of data science, so it's already a demand field. So I already have one foot in the door in that sense. I'm one of very few people who's experienced so much now. I'm almost clocking up to 8 years now. So that is valuable experience. That also helps me pass the first stage very easily of resume check, for example. So that's why I want to really focus on the interview side, because resume I don't know much about. I have my pedigree of data experience that helps me there. Job opportunity and technical expertise, again, that's just my experience that I have that I can really add value on. But the interview part is really the place where anyone can just learn it. So I really wanted to focus on that instead. So to start off, I really think being authentic is your key to anything in life. One thing that I always get feedback from people wherever I finish my job, project, or whatever, I always hear feedback that you are very authentic. You did not need to pretend. It doesn't feel like you're pretending. You're just being yourself. And some people find that hard to believe because they go like, how is that possible? Everyone has a mask on, right? You have a mask on when you're in front of family. You have a mask on when you're in your friends. You have a mask on when you are at work. And that is true. Some people do that. I know of friends of mine who talk to me and I'm like, how are you even employed? But when you see them in their jobs, they're like a completely different person. And you're like, wow, amazed. But I feel like life would be just much more easier if we just take all the masks off and just be the person we are. And of course, be nice at the end of the day. I think that's the whole point. I am predisposed, or the word is not predisposed. I always make a mistake with that word in the real word. So assume that's the real word right now. But I'm more inclined to be likable, to be extroverted, to be talkative. So an easier person to talk to in general. So that's why I never had to put a mask on when I went to work. I did have to keep a mask on and trying to sound like I'm credible or smart. That's something I'm still working on. A couple of years ago, it was more harder. That's the feedback I used to get from everyone and from my work that you're trying too hard, you're trying to act like you know everything, and you can't know everything because look at your age. You don't have much experience. But now, naturally, after 5, 6 months, 6 years of working, 7 years of working, that experience came by itself that I don't need to pretend anymore. It's just there. And people just trust it. And it takes some time and effort, but you have to believe that some things do need time. And I think credibility is one of those things. So I am just a person who is much more easier and inclined to gel with people. So that really helps me in this interview stage. So do have those things in your mind when you're listening to my advice, because at the end of the day, this might be actionable conversations. This will be an actionable podcast, but it still has its underpinning of what and who Ahad is. And it can't be like someone who's introverted, doesn't like gelling with people, doesn't like talking to people, who is very concrete, who have their own way of portraying their expertise, might not be able to really extract value from these things, because these things require a personality maybe like I have. So being authentic is number one, right? You have to be yourself. You have to be honest about who you are. You have to be honest about your stories. That brings me to number two, stories. People forget how much we love stories. What I usually do every single time is tell a story to the person who's talking to me, because you do some coffee chat first, right? You're just talking to how's it going, what are you up to, and you might think this is not important, but telling a story is a way of bonding. That person feels like, that person is sharing something intimate with me, and that's why your story needs to be intimate. It needs to be about something you find important, like your family or your friends or some experience you had, something that they shouldn't know of, something out of official capacity. A story is not like, oh, what were you? So how's it going? Everything? Nothing. It's all fine. I was just busy working on this new project on the side. No, no, that's fake. That's not good. Focus on you. Focus on what you like to do. Focus on your difficulties. I always tell people, if you wear your limitations and your weakness and your feelings, whatever have you, on your sleeves, it becomes like an armor, because you're not trying to protect it anymore. It protects you, because then no one can say anything to you because you already have put it out there. So it's not something they can take advantage of because it's already out there. So always keep that in front of you, right? Be authentic, tell authentic stories. There can be stories which are a bit more difficult, can be stories which are much more nicer. It's up to you what kind of story you want to tell, but that story really brings it together. Ideally, it would be nice if it's a story that they can resonate with, and that's why it's good to always listen to them first, which is what, number 3, active listening, right? Whenever you're in an interview, the interviewer will introduce themselves first. The interviewer will always talk about themselves and tell what they like and what they do and everything. And then it's your turn to introduce yourself. And that's where the part 2 of stories come in, that you take what they said to you and find a good story that helps you connect with them, build rapport with them. So, for example, if someone says they're from Turkey and they moved here to the Netherlands 5 years ago, and now they've been working in this position for like 3 years now, and they love football and whatever have you. And my instinctual reaction will be to say, "Hey, I studied in Turkey. Oh, which city? I studied in Ankara. Oh, yes, yes, and so amazing food. I've been to Istanbul actually. Which part of Istanbul are you from? Which neighborhood, etc., etc." And that already builds up, but they already feel like, oh, look, I know this person now because they lived in my country. So there must be something about them that I already like. So that really helps you, right? And you can only get all of that information out if you're willing to listen. If you're not willing to listen, if you're just very focused on this toolkit in your head and this game plan that, okay, I'm going to do this, you are going to miss out on it. You're going to miss out on the human experience of just listening and then being able to tell a good story. So those are 3 very important parts and 3 very generic parts, if you ask me, because if you ask anybody, they're going to say the same things, right? But I really feel like people forget this. If you look at job interview techniques online, they all keep saying STAR methods, or have your story toolbox, have your project toolbox, actionable, quantifiable. All of those projects need to be quantifiable, result driven, data driven, keywords, buzzwords. I really don't focus on that because that doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's a human who's making a decision, and they will only make the decision based on their gut. And their gut will only choose you if they like you as a person, because your resume tells everything it needs to tell about your experience, your technical experience. So they already know that. So when they compare you with another person, they're going to be comparing the resumes. But when they compare you with another person, in their heads, they're not going to be comparing the resumes. They're going to be comparing the conversations that they had with you. And those conversations need to be in a way so good that they remember you more than the other person. So you really need to focus on these elements: the active listening part, the authenticity part, the stories part. So this is really, really important, right? This is the part I really wanted to hone in on. But what happens after that? Now that what happens after this is some of the buzzwords I already mentioned, right? Once you are through stories, listening, and everything, now it's time to jump into the real talk, the meat of the talk, which is the technical experience. And here, again, I like to use the power of stories. I already mentioned those things to you. As I said, I don't think they're that important, as important as these 3, but they are still going to be part of the process because at the end you're talking about some technical thing. So have a toolbox ready of stories that you brought value to the business in your previous work. And that value can be tangible in numbers. It can be also tangible in value from processes. At the end of the day, what they really want to know is, what can you bring to their business? And this is the skill. Those SMART goals, tangible goals, and everything, the toolkit and everything that I mentioned in the past, they're all very valuable. But my unique experience is to add the story element into it. Because once you add the story element into it, it becomes about you. And again, it becomes a story that they're willing to listen to rather than just numbers you throw out. So have that moment. Have a toolbox ready with at least 5 stories that help exhibit your skills and characteristics. It can be about your strengths, your weaknesses. It can be about projects. It can be about value that you've driven. It can be about people, culture that you brought into an organization. And I'll give you some examples. So, from a very typical technical one. So, what projects did you work on in the past that you think are very important that you want to highlight? The project that I can think of is my most recent project, not my most recent project, but my first project that I did when I came to the Netherlands. And that was working for a charging infrastructure company. And I was their first, not the first, their only BI developer. And before me, there was a guy who just did everything himself. So it was everything was very messy. And I was also learning a little bit, so I did not know what to improve upon yet. But what I really wanted to bring was business value. So when I went there, I talked to the stakeholders, and they had these wonderful ideas of insights that they wanted to see. And I was like, okay, let me find those insights for you. And that's what I did. I found those insights, specifically insights on how their charging is going per station and how we can improve the efficiency of those stations, the utilization of those stations. And through that, we could find the bottleneck that, okay, where do we need to upgrade capacity in our stations? A very simple, actionable thing, right? I help them make better decisions. As a data person, that's literally your end goal, to help the organization become better at making decisions. So that's a technical example. But I also have an example of a culture example. Nowadays, wherever I go to my current project, I always bring fruits. And people are very confused. They all get confused. They're like, why are you bringing fruits? And I'm like, I learned this from my previous role where the team manager would just bring mandarins into a team meeting every Wednesday. For some reason, he was just really used to it. And then everyone around the table, after eating some good lunch, would just kick off the second half of the day with some nice mandarin. And it was a good relationship building exercise. We would all take it from each other, we would all throw it to each other and be like, hey, thank you for that, thank you for that. And I realized it's very valuable. So I took that, I upgraded a bit, and now every week I go, I bring a new fruit to my team. And at first they were all very awkward. They all were like, should we take it? Should we not take it? But now it's more like I just keep it on the table and people just go like, I'm taking one. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. And now suddenly everyone knows your name. Everyone knows the value you bring to their culture by bringing healthy fruit for them. So they become a bit more healthier. They enjoy the fact that you think of them. They enjoy the fact that you're willing to share with them and you're willing to become a team player. Because it is effort, not just monetarily, but also every morning to go into the store before coming to work to get that thing that tells you that you value something here. And I think that's a good example of a story where you talk about team culture instead of just something tangible. Last thing that I really want to mention about the interviews that I really think is very important for you to know to actually get a really good close off on the interview. People talk really about weaknesses, right? And I think this is one of my biggest skills, that I'm very, very self-aware about my weaknesses. And it is not easy to say that to a person who will be hiring you. You can't be like, I am very sloppy at my work, and I need to have people check up on me all the time. I like a micromanager. I cannot work independently, whatever have you. And they'll be like, this person will be more of a burden than an asset. But as I said before in the start, that if you wear your weaknesses on your sleeve, then no one can hurt you. So you need to own it up, and not just own it up, but also have some actionable next steps. So what I do when I have to answer that question, they're like, okay, what is your weakness? I'm like, well, my weakness is I take up the room. I talk more than I listen. And it's a habit because I'm a talkative person. So whenever we're in a meeting, I sometimes start speaking for everybody and I start answering the questions that I ask myself. And I give people very open ended questions to answer so they don't really have a right answer. and I struggle to listen to them sometimes because I'm too focused on getting my points across first. So they're like, okay, that's scary because that will really hamper team productivity. So how do you handle it? I'm like, how do you improve upon it? And I'm like, I have a plan. That's what I do. I have realized that once I start talking, it's very difficult for me to stop. So I realized that maybe I need to change the role that I am in when I'm in a meeting. So when I'm in a meeting as a participant, then I have this need to express my opinion. But if I am the facilitator of the meeting, then I have no such need to prove myself or anyone else that I know my stuff and here it is. Because as a facilitator, what you do is you ask people for what they want to do, they give you a response, you give your opinion on it, and then you ask someone else, what do you think about it? You pass the baton basically, right? And essentially what you're doing there is, as a role of a facilitator, you let everyone speak properly and you keep adding a little bit to those points to make it clear for the next person. That way you get to share what you really want to share, but also not take up the room. And that is my solution to it. So wherever I set up a meeting, I always give myself the role of a facilitator to make it easier for me to control this tendency, but also fix the problem that I don't take over the room and be a weakness to the people around me. It's very difficult to say that in an interview because they'll be scared. And yes, sometimes you don't get a call back. Sometimes I do get feedback saying, I don't know, maybe it's not the right culture fit. And that's fine. It's fine. Because that means that organization will not be good for you because they're not willing to accept you for who you are. But more often than not, I do get a call back saying that, hey, we really appreciate your honesty and your transparency. I really enjoyed that conversation with you because people love hearing novel things. They love hearing stuff which is out of the ordinary, and someone talking about their weaknesses so openly is out of the ordinary. So you should also have that ready in your head, what you want to talk about. It really helps. Again, it makes you feel human, not just a name on a paper, and they really would resonate with that. So that was the interviewing part that I really wanted to focus on, right? But there are two other aspects as well that I really wanted to mention was resume and projects. As I said, here my expertise is a bit less, so this will be a much shorter version than the last two, last section. So let's first delve into resume. I'm actually coming to a point in my life that I never thought I would, that 1-page resume is not enough for me. But I refuse to go to a 2-page resume because I feel like, again, a resume is just an introduction to you. It is not everything about you. So you have to be really selective on what you put on the resume. Till now, I could just put all of my projects in the resume because there was just so much space. But now, after clocking in almost 8 years, I have to realize that maybe I need to start cutting some stuff off because it's not important. Maybe it's too old. Maybe it's not relevant to the role that I'm applying to. So you need to really make sure your resume is geared towards the role that you're applying to. It is geared towards only the information that is needed for this role. If you are like me, a person who has done multiple variant different things, and you're applying for a role, you can scrape some of the other things that are not relevant to the role. Because at the end of the day, they will not judge you on those roles. They will judge you on the roles that are relevant to the one that you're applying to. So don't take up extra real estate than needed. And also don't favor their attention somewhere else than it needs to be. So that's point number one. Try to focus your experience and tailor your experience to the role that it has. Second, always have a story there. Again, an introduction or a why me or what can I do, who am I. That because even if before they get to see you or on your interview, they do want to have a glimpse of who Ahad is, for example. And that little excerpt tells them a little bit about you, who you are. Then, of course, you have certifications. That's normal, again, relevant to it, and skills. Now, skills is a very controversial one because everyone puts everything that is there. But the feedback that I've gotten from people is put skills that are tangible. Don't put skills like communication, stakeholder management, project management. Those are not skills. Skills are tangible, hard skills, right? Project management is not a hard skill because why I say that is because you can prove that you have project management skills by showing certifications in project management. So you don't need to rate yourself out of 10 in project management. That should be enough. But for example, things like Python, SQL, some technical skills, and I'm going to talk about my field because I don't know how other people work. Like I don't know how marketing professionals, business professionals work because I never worked as a business professional. So this will be a bit more geared towards me. And this, in my field, you don't use soft skills here, you put hard skills here. And you can argue project management is a hard skill, maybe, I don't know, but in my context, it isn't. So I let it be, right? Agile, Scrum is a hard skill because working with Scrum takes time. Some people don't really know how to work with Scrum and Agile, but they also have certification. So sometimes I don't know what even the right answer is. So what I put is I only put technical skills there. Technical skills that are relevant, again, to the position that I'm applying to. If I apply as a Scrum Master, then these are the appropriate certifications and appropriate skills that I need to show, which are related to Scrum. So Scrum methodologies, scaled Agile frameworks, requirements gathering, maybe not requirements gathering, but more like some Scrum events that I've done. So for example, retrospectives or big room plannings or quarterly business reviews. Have I worked with those events? Have I worked with those Scrum events? Facilitation, what kind of facilitations am I doing? So here it gets a bit murky, even for me. I'll be honest with you. As I say it, I'm realizing okay, maybe these are soft skills and hard skills. As I said, this is a question mark. In my analyst role, it's more hard. SQL, Python, Power BI, Tableau, Excel, VBA, whatever have you. Makes life easier. But that's usually my template. And you also have a picture on top. That's just my opinion. Some people disagree with that, but I really like a picture. Again, it brings the human out. Try to understand the psychology behind humans. Humans love humans, and they love anything that makes a human human. So the more human you try to be in front of someone, you have better chances. Of course, technical skills still matter. I'm not saying that you can go to a job that you're completely unqualified for because you are a human. But if it's between you and another very skilled individual, being human can give you the edge. Last thing I want to mention is projects. And I think this is, for some people, they argue this is the best thing that you can focus on. I disagree. I think the interviewing is also very important, but this will get you to the interview. So I do get the value there. So what is it about? What projects can really do is, again, make your skills, make your experience tangible. It really, really helps you showcase what you have done. A lot of times in my field, you just do data projects, take free data sets, do some analysis on it, do some machine learning on it, do some artificial intelligence on it, showcase that you know the hard skills like Python to run code, you understand the best practices of how to handle data, how to clean data, how to analyze data, and basically showcase every aspect of data science that you can, because you can. But nowadays, everyone can do a project. So again, that becomes just like everyone knows how to give a good interview based on these STAR methods. Everyone knows how to make a good resume thanks to these whole resume classes people come up with. Everyone now knows how to make projects, and they, because of free data sets available on websites like Kaggle, data analysts have tremendous amount of projects. But you still are going to beat like 80% of the people by having projects, because 80% of them still don't bother to have projects. They think it's too much work. 20% they will have projects, but even those can be beaten by having projects that are relevant, right? Again, you can just attach your GitHub portfolio and showcase random stuff like flower data sets in which you're analyzing the length and the width of a flower, but that doesn't really have any business value. As an analyst, in my experience, I can only talk from my experience. You want to solve a business problem. And I think that goes for any other job that you're looking for. You're trying to solve a problem, that's why they're hiring you, right? You're trying to do something there. So your portfolio should highlight that. It shouldn't just highlight, in my case, if you're data analyst, just highlight your data analytical capabilities, but also your communication abilities. Also, what value you're bringing out from the data set. So it's not just about, hey, look at this basic data analysis I did, and look at this machine learning algorithms that I ran, and look at the beautiful results that came out. No, what do those results mean? In this hypothetical scenario where this data set is from, what value will this results bring to that hypothetical organization? That commentary, to me, is more important than the code, especially after ChatGPT, because even ChatGPT can write that code for you. But it can't write that commentary for you, because the commentary requires business context, it requires knowledge, it requires connecting different information together. That is something Gen AI is still struggling with a little bit. So that is where you add your value. So projects are great, do them hands on. But if I could ask you to make one thing better in your projects, it would be to add projects with context and commentary that is important to bringing value to whatever thing you're trying to build. Tangible business value that you can bring in your projects. That's again the most important thing that you can do. To summarize, at the end of the day, it's all about being human, being valuable, and being tangible. If you do these three things properly in any interview, resume, or project, you should be able to get across at least the first door in. From there, I think you would know better than I do how to handle your technical interviews. So, a bit of a tangent in what we should talk about here at the Weekly Bustle, but I really wanted to have this kind of a conversation because I really thought it would be interesting to see how people like it, to see if it's something maybe I should talk about more, because it is my day job. It is something I do most of the time. It's my bread and butter. Yet I don't get to talk about it much because it doesn't give me that much energy. I really enjoy having those thoughtful experiments and thinking about those things. But sometimes it's also good to take the experience that you have and share it with the world and see if anyone really likes it or not. So if you are here listening to these things and you enjoy it, please leave a comment. Tell me you want more of this, and we can make more of this kind of content based on the kind of reaction we get. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back here soon again next week with normal programming of talking about things. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time.